introducing Denis Villeneuve, director of Dune and Dune Part 2. Sir, my thanks, my forever thanks for making these films a reality for all of us fans out there.
Uh, Please, thank you.
It's wonderful seeing you again because I know that you went through all of this with the first film, going through it again now with the second film. Obviously, your team, everyone involved are being praised for their work on this. And, you've said before how much more challenging part two was compared to part one. I imagine that also extended to every element of production, the cast, the crew, everyone just upping their game. Can you tell me, for your team, what was the number one thing you were most proud of that you accomplished throughout the production of part two?
When these kinds of movies, there are multiple moments, scenes that were quite complex. It's not a kind of shoot where you can rest on day 25 and day 26. It's like there's like every day is a challenge. But I will say that there was like a real strong team effort to be able to. I will say that again. Okay, sorry. Will you be able to cut a bit? Okay. Yeah, okay. So I will start again. I will say
Yeah, no problem.
there there were multiple uh, uh, challenges during the shoot. It's not a type of shoot where you can rest on specific shooting days. It's that each day has its own challenges. But I will say that the warm ride was a team effort that I'm very proud of because I didn't want to compromise, and it required a lot of work from my team.
Yeah. And when it comes to the writing process too, your work has engaged, I know, with Middle Eastern culture before and settings like Incendies, for example. When you're going about exploring cultures and specificity with the degree of sensitivity that's required in this adaptation process, can you tell me a little bit about the challenges that present itself along the way? Because this is ultimately a story about someone who is coming to oppress and ultimately uh, use a culture to his own benefit.
Yeah, it's a tragedy. It's like a bit like the story of Lawrence of Arabia, where a character will fall in love with the culture and then betrayed it, and that's what is interesting about this story. It's not a celebration of a heroic figure. It's a cautionary tale, a warning toward the impact of colonialism and the power of the danger of charismatic leaders. Um, when we did the adaptation, Frank Herbert inspired himself from many cultures when he
Yeah.
wrote the book, from Scandinavian, Spain, Middle Eastern, American natives. It was a blend. He tried to bring as much as possible of roots coming out of from Earth in order to create this galaxy. And I tried to have the same approach, meaning trying that we will feel the colors, the flavors, some of some hints of earth culture, trying like an homage in some ways.
Yeah. There were people who misunderstood Paul's arc from Frank Herbert's original source, and that's why he ultimately made Dune Messiah to kind of answer to that. You, when doing part two, really wanted to tackle that head on and make sure that that was not left open to interpretation so much. But
Absolutely.
yet, I still hear some people like delivering feedback of seeing Paul still as that leader that they do want to follow. And that's a testament too of how well I think rounded a character and he is and Chalamet's performance. What do you make of people who still are not reading the signs of this cautionary tale, as you put it?
The thing is, because you're absolutely right, it was very important for me to be faithful to Frank Herbert, and I went this adaptation went far with the idea that we I insisted that we should make sure that we are more faithful to Frank Herbert than to the book, and meaning that I use the character of Shani in order to create a distance with Paul. In the third act, we start to be on Shani's side of things. She's our moral compass in the story, and to have a critic distance and see that Paul is deviating from what he was supposed to do and become a colonizer, colonization figure himself, like the thing he was
Yeah.
funding at the beginning. It's a very tragic thing. He betrayed the people he loved in order to try to find a path to survive. I will say that I think that everything is clear at the end of the movie. If you watch it,
Yeah.
even until the very last frame, when we see Shani, the how betrayed she feels as a woman, but also as a politically, which is the why I think her heart is truly broken. Um, That's the thing. Paul is a charismatic figure. He is, and that's what makes it so tragic. And if some people are how can I say, seduced by his power, that's the tragedy of Dune. So it's like I try to
Yeah.
make clear that the adaptation to be clear that the people should focus on Shani's perspective of things.
Yeah. So, in terms of another reaction to how this movie has taken on a life of its own, I'm sure you have been told Lisa Al-Gaib has like now become a meme. As written is now entered the lexicon of like phrases that is said now. I feel like, how does it feel to see Dune kind of have this resurgence in pop culture? People dressing up at Comic-Con as characters and seeing this wild surge in popularity now for Herbert's work.
It's when I made this adaptation, there was many goals, but one of them was to try to uh, bring a spotlight on the book, to try to bring back people to the book I loved so much, and it's one of the reasons I made the movies PG-13 because I wanted the young people to go back to the book. I read the book when I was pretty young, and the fact that I see that movement right now, and as you said, in pop culture, and the fact that people are embracing this world, that means the world to me. Yeah,
Yeah.
when we released part one, if you remember, it was at the end of the pandemic. We were still under severe rules, and I didn't have real contact with the audience. But when we released part two, we traveled around the world with the actors, and I witnessed the amount of love that people had for Frank Herbert and the movies, and that meant the world to me. You know, when you make movies, there's the idea that ultimately you want to be in a relationship with people. You want to bring something. You want to try to communicate something. And when you feel that there's somebody at the other end that said thumbs up and is happy to go back on Arrakis, that means the world.
Yeah. Well, I've seen the film in theaters 10 times. I could not, yeah, I could not get enough of it. I absolutely fell in love so much with your vision and the way it was communicated to the screen. And I wanted nothing more than to just spend more time on Arrakis and with these characters. And also, too, Hans Zimmer's score, I think, is just so incredible and majestic and otherworldly at times. It was just recently announced that his work for part two is not going to be able to be eligible to compete this year for the Oscars due to using pre-existing score and breaking their rules or whatever. But I appreciate so much that even with a break in between shooting, you maintain continuity visually, sonically,
Yeah.
everything.
The idea here is one. I think that story is not over yet. Honestly, I think
Oh,
that there's something that was not considered is that it's not a sequel. It's the second part of this of a huge project. And
hmm,
so it will be absolutely normal to have some themes that are recurrent or echoes the first part. Because I was there when Hans composed the score. He composed a tremendous amount of music for this movie, and it's by far one of his best scores. So I
yeah.
very sad if it was not at least considered. But we'll see what happens in the upcoming weeks.
Fingers crossed. I think the love theme, especially between Chani and Paul,
Stunning,
is
stunning, yeah, 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 absolutely stunning work. I was very, and I insisted. I remember that's the first thing I said to Hans. I mean, the whole movie is structured around that relationship. about around the birth of the love between Shelley and Paul, then their love growing and having under the pressure of the politics, and then the breakout, the separation because of different political views. And I said to Hans, I need one of the best, if not the best, love theme ever written. I need something very powerful that will break hearts, that will be in relationship with the landscape and the desert at the same time. He falls in love with the girl. He falls in love with the planet at the same time. I wanted about the Fremen culture. And I wanted to become incredibly tragic at the end, and he did it. And I think it's a tour de force. And I would love him to be considered. That's it. That's it.
Much like Christopher Nolan, you've become a poster boy, a savior, if you will, for cinema and seeing films on the big screen in these really epic formats. Is there a desire, though, to maybe go back at some point to something a little bit smaller, say like Incendies or Prisoners at some point?
Thing is that I think we are many
Hmm.
filmmakers that absolutely believe in the big screen theatrical experience. I think that's where cinema was born. That's part of the language for me, and I'm sure it's going to be prevail. Uh, Cinema has been under tremendous pressure to since its birth. There's always technical revolutions that comes along the way, and it always creates a bit of chaos on the path. The recent years have been rough, it's true, but I'm not worried for the future. Um, I have the energy right now to make movies that require more work, like the sci-fi movies require a lot of work to the world building, etc., etc. And I have that energy now. I might not have this and that is the same energy in 20 years. So my projects for the coming projects are ambitious technically, but I'm sure one day it's all about the nature of the story at the end of the day. It's like, yeah. So yes, to answer your question, probably I will go back
Yeah.
to something a bit more contained.
And speaking of story, with part one and part two, you have told the first book. You have told this story in its complete form, better than I've seen anybody else attempt it prior to this. There is another book here, Dune Messiah, which I know you've said you're currently trying to work on. It's a beast. I've read that book. That is a tough book to crack. So I do not envy you in the slightest. But I do have one particular question that is really, really nagging at me, and I'm hoping you can help me a little bit here. Characters like Gurney and Lady Jessica are not in Dune Messiah, but Rebecca Ferguson, Josh Brolin are so integral to part one and part two. Is there maybe an adaptation change where you're trying to fit them in somehow?
The thing is that when I'm working on at the beginning of a project, I'm always I think it's a very delicate time,
Hmm.
and I try to protect the baby in the womb. It's responsible. So I don't comment or talk about.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, but I
No,
understand
no,
your
don't. Hey, I
concern.
get it.
I respect your concerns, and yeah, voilà.
No, it's born out of love for these
Yeah,
characters, for these performances. Truly, truly. Um,
and by the way,
when we
I like you absolutely adore Rebecca Ferguson and Josh Brolin, and I think they did a fantastic job in both movies. Uh, um, Specifically, I think that Rebecca was able to reach level of acting, uh, walking in different dimension. You know, where it's quite she's a quite remarkable actress. I knew as I was shooting, I could always she was my pillar, you know. She was my
yeah.
rock. I knew I can count on her no matter what the scene was about.
Yeah, totally. A director's job a lot of times is to solve problems. And I can imagine with all the planning that could possibly go into a project as large as this, there's always problems that present themselves when you find yourself on set or in the editing room. Can you think of one particular problem that you solved in the production of Dune Part 2 that you're really proud of?
It's a good question. I mean, you're right. It's like problem solving is we are constantly dealing with But the thing that is the toughest when for this both movies adaptation and it's always go back to the screenplay. It's
Mm,
always to be able to extract from the material, the source material, as something that will be belong to the cinematic language. And I will say that cracking that screenplay was the biggest problem, and that's what I'm probably the most proud of. Yes.
yeah. I know that also too with part one and part two, whether it was the pandemic
And
or
if I
yeah.
may, I apologize if I may, that came with this idea. One of the things that I'm very happy about is the idea that in order to be faithful to Frank Herbert's initial desires, that it should be a cautionary tale, a warning against a messianic figure, and not a celebration of Paul Atreides. The idea that in the third act we will embrace Shani's point of view,
Mhm.
and she will become our moral compass. That it's a solution that I'm very proud of.
Yeah. No, I particularly love that Johnny's character was given a lot more to do, and I think Zendaya absolutely crushed it. I can't wait to see how much she expands upon the character with Messiah. Um, and then as we wrap up here, I was saying earlier that the pandemic, the Hollywood strikes, it seems like your post production process on both films have been cursed almost to some degree or another. But can you tell me though, with the possibility of, you know, Dune Messiah is in production, you have then say no issues impeding you whatsoever. What would you like to have at your disposal resource wise that you may not have had on these previous two to see that vision come to fruition?
Well, it's a good question. I will say that both movies were made. Listen, to first to make a Dune adaptation, to have the chance to make this adaptation was one of the biggest privilege of my life, and I was given uh, a lot of firepower to do it. You know, I was free to cast the people I wanted to cast, and I had enough money to make both films. So
You
if
also moved really fast too, like really fast.
sorry.
You also made them really fast, I
Back to
feel
back,
like.
yes, yes. So
Yeah.
to I will say to um, have the same frame of work as the two others, where you have enough firepower, enough money to make them as I want it to make. But my answer is very boring right now, so I'm sorry. You should cut that out.
I'm not. I'm not. It's all good because honestly, Denny, you have forever earned our trust. We will follow you to the ends of the earth, beyond to whatever planet you want to take us to, any story, because you've given us something that we did not think was possible. And for that, we are forever grateful. And I think everyone within the cinematic community as well can appreciate the work that you and your amazing team, visually, sonically, everything, were able to put up there on the screen. It is a big movie event that should be seen on the biggest screen possible. And I love that it's just been embraced all around the world.
Yeah, that was the biggest gift of all, that people went to the theater. That
Yeah,
meant the world. And I thank you for your generosity. Thank you.
absolutely, man. I'll see you over hopefully the next couple of weeks as another, once again, award season and tributes and all that rolls on. You deserve it. Thank you so much for the time here. It's an honor.
Yeah, thank you very much. Take care.
Take
And
care.
sorry, I was a bit rusted this morning. I was with coffee. I didn't. I was looking for my English is not still on. I apologize.
It's all good. I've been up since 4 a.m. doing interviews for like London, so it's been a
Okay,
day.
I cannot
Yeah.
complain. All right, take care.
Take care.